Welcome to the White and Blue Podcast. I'm Doug Goodnow, and my co-host is Colleen McGinnis. We are here to tell the interesting stories of Hillsdale College alumni, or more accurately, help them share their own stories. Here's a little bit about today's guest. Juliane Malia Hillock from the class of 1991 has dedicated her life to education. Originally from Portland, Maine, she is the founding principal of Hozho Academy in Gallup, New Mexico, a Hillsdale Barney charter school. She holds a bachelor's degree in English from Hillsdale College and a master's degree in school leadership from Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. Juliane, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Juliane, it's a pleasure to have you and to have you here this weekend and to honor you with a Distinguished Alumni Achievement Award for your work in education. So thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. I always enjoy coming back.
Awesome. So it was just I would say a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, that Doug and I had the chance to visit your school in Gallup. And it was, I would say, we spent a day with you. I would say it was a life-changing as far as just experiencing what you're doing there and seeing the work that Hillsdale is doing too manifested there. It was really encouraging to me. Anyway, sometimes you get in a daily slog, and you don't realize exactly the impact that the place where you work has. And the impact that is boots on the ground there in Gallup is just phenomenal. So congratulations. But tell me about your journey there. How did you make the decision to move your family from the Scottsdale area to Gallup, New Mexico on this adventure?
Well, thank you for having me here, and thank you for your kind words. And I'm very honored to have the presentation of the award this week. And I can connect with what you're saying about taking a step back and seeing with boots on the ground, I think, because even I, in the day-to-day grind of things, forget about the good things that are happening there. But my journey there, I guess, started here at Hillsdale with, I knew I wanted to be in education my whole life. I just knew that was what I wanted to do. But when I graduated in 1991, many of the jobs available were only special education jobs, and I thought I wasn't cut out for that. I thought that sounded too hard, and I wasn't someone who could manage all of those things and do it well. And so then my son was born, and he had some difficulty with speech and some developmental delays and things. And so I kind of got brought into that world. And then once I understood what my role would be, stepping into a special education role at that point was just like breathing. It was just, I knew exactly what I needed to do and how to do it and how to be good at it. So I became a special education teacher and worked in Maine, and then we moved to Arizona, and I worked in Arizona with students with some high needs, emotional disabilities and autism, and my role was really to try to get them into a general education classroom as quickly and efficiently as possible and have it work well. And then at one point, I decided that I really felt I called to lead a school. And I thought I would be leading a school for students with special needs. And so I was looking into that. But then I thought about Hillsdale College and opening up a school here in Maine, in Maine where I was from. So I looked into that, but I didn't really feel like I was qualified to do that either. So I decided to go back to school, got my master's degree, and learned how to run a school. And then once I graduated with my principalship, with my principal degree, I went into a school that was more of a project-based learning school. And at the time, I thought, well, that seems like an interesting thing. Let's investigate that. But after being in that school for a while and seeing how it did not serve the most vulnerable students or the students who really needed to learn, I decided that this isn't the right model for everyone. So what is the right model for everybody? And so that brought me back to Hillsdale College and looking at opening the school in Maine. And we were going quite well. We had people lined up. Things were working out. And then I'm not sure what happened. It just kind of halted and stalled. And I came up to Hillsdale and spoke to the Barney charter people, and they said, well, we do have other schools that need principals, so here's a list. And one of the schools on the list was Gallup. And my husband said, absolutely not. We're not moving to Gallup.
That was the only city, right, on the list that he was like, no.
That was the only place he said no. He would have been willing to move anywhere else on that list. And they were all over the United States. But he said, absolutely not Gallup. I think because Gallup does have that reputation of being a difficult place. And if you go there, the quality of life, the things that you're going to have to deal with are going to be much harder than they would be someplace else. So you have to be prepared for that. And I think my family was thinking that, why take that on? Why make you don't have to. Why bother to do that? Why not just go somewhere where it would be a little easier? But I do like a challenge. So the more I thought about it, and then I met the people there, and then I felt like this is really where I'm supposed to be. So my husband said, you can have 2 years. That's it. And now this will be year 8. So
And that was in 2020, is that right?
2018 is when we opened, yes.
Okay.
Well, he should have realized you went to an alma mater whose motto is strength rejoices in the challenge. So that should have been a little hint to him that you were probably moving in that direction, right?
That's right. He knows that now. He knows. And in fact, it has probably pulled him in too. So he's
excellent.
We were the only school in the only charter school in New Mexico that has its own transportation program, and he started that. And that was a super challenge. So he's decided to come on board and work on all the challenges that are presenting themselves with this school.
Well, like you said, you started in 2018, very, difficult situation, a lot of families in dire need economically in a lot of different areas. Tell me about that early process, and then you had a huge hurdle. Pretty much everybody had a huge hurdle when COVID hit. So talk about those early years and what you had to deal with.
Well, when I first studied the demographics of Gallup, and I realized that some or a majority of the students and families I'd be serving would be Native American, it did give me pause to think about providing a Western civilization curriculum in a primarily Native American community. And what would that look like? And so I did a lot of research and studying primarily with E.D. Hirsch and the ideas of access to the common American culture, and understanding that in order to access the higher levels of power in our community, you have to be a part of the culture. You have to understand the culture. Sort of like Frederick Douglass, when he was trying to convince people that, the evils of slavery, he did it in a way that, because he was educated within that same structure, he was able to connect and reach people. And so I felt like this was just another example of that. So I was prepared. I had all my points to talk about. And what I found was that people were just interested in the education and were not particularly interested in my defense of it. So it worked out better that way. And people wanted to enroll, and it just took off. We opened, we had 110 students. We were K-5. We had 110 students to start. By the end of the year, we had about 170 students. The next year, we had 200 and some students, 230, I think. And then it just kept growing. But right after that first year, so we opened in 2018 to 19, and then obviously 19 to 20 became the COVID year. And it's so hard to start a school, especially when that's a classical model, because we were really focused on not having electronics, reduced access to screens and computers. And then, so we were 0%, as much as close as possible to 0% technology. And then the next year we're 100% technology, but in a community that had no access to internet services. So what happened was everyone's just supposed to go online. Well, in the reservations in the Navajo Nation and the area where we live, there was no internet. And so the state sent us boxes and boxes of Khajiits, little hotspots, with all sorts of, subscriptions on them, an immense number of them. So we were going to hand those out, but nobody had cell phone service at their homes. So this big box of Khajiits just sat there with nobody had any access. I did the entire COVID time with no no cell phone, no internet, no mail comes to our house. And I just lived about 10 miles from the school, and no cell service. So we had no way of connecting the entire time. And the school actually just had a household modem. We just had a little, like you would have in your living room. That was to serve our entire school. So we had no computers. We had to completely do a 180 and try to figure out how to do this online. So that was very hard. But through it all, we continued to gain enrollment. We didn't even have a sign out front, and we continued to gain enrollment. But it was through primarily word of mouth of families and wanting what we were offering. And I think a lot of schools had some exposure during that COVID time. They were putting their lessons online, and parents were actually tuning in to see what was being taught. And I think that worked to our advantage a little bit, because they could see exactly what the rich curriculum that our students were engaged with. So there was good and bad there. But yes.
How did you get around that? How did you provide them the materials that they needed and the support?
In most circumstances, we had a hybrid system. We put some things online for those who could access it. For those who could not, we put packets together, we put materials together, we would drive them to people's houses, we would set up times for them to come in to pick up, and it was an ongoing process of just adjusting for every situation. It wasn't like we had one method. This is how we're doing COVID instruction. It was, okay, what does this student need? Okay, how are we going to make that? What does this student family need? Okay, how are we going to do that? And we had to be that personal for every single family. And
that's remarkable.
Yeah, it was hard. It was very hard. And on top of that was meals. We had to provide meals to everybody. So
it's just a state mandate.
Well, because of we're in a food desert and there was very little access to healthy foods, we just made that commitment that we would try to do that. So we were delivering meals to families, or families would come through and pick up boxes for the week and with instructions on how to take care of that. So it was a lot for us to do, having only been open for a year.
Right.
That was the hard part.
I'd say even more than a year. And here you are, running the school. These aren't probably normal situations for someone in your position, right? Where you're having to kind of like do a heavy lift of some things that are normally just happen without a pandemic.
Right. I think I did find my roles changing quite frequently. In fact, one time the state decided that they would allow schools to coordinate some internet providers to help families who didn't have internet, to try to bring some of those things in. So they were trying to build that infrastructure. So then it became my job to coordinate with the internet companies to have installs at different people's homes, and they would be calling me saying, we can't get in.
You were a tech assist, right?
I was the help desk. It was, there's a dog in the yard. How do we get in? The number of switching gears is just, and if somebody had told me that what was going to happen, I don't think I would have been able to take that
That's why we don't know the future. We're not entitled to that.
Yeah, because we don't think we can handle it.
Yeah.
But someone else knows better.
So for the members of our audience, like me, who there may be some like me, although maybe not, but I really only understood Gallup through the Route 66 song. That's it. So could you describe the nature of Gallup and the economic situation there and what it's all about?
Sure. So Gallup is a fairly small town, about 20,000 people overall. But on the weekends, people come in from all of the different areas because there are restaurant chains and gas stations and Walmart. And so people will come in on the weekends. So there could be a couple 100,000 people coming into Gallup on the weekends, but during the week, it operates like a small town. Primarily Native American, and from the Native American community, there are most of the people are Navajo, and there are some Zuni and other Pueblo tribes around, but primarily Navajo. I think it out of all the places I've worked or lived, Gallup struggles with some things that people wouldn't realize still exist in our country, that some families don't have running water and electricity in their homes. But part of that, there's a push and pull, because the traditional way to live as a Navajo person in a hogan was a dirt floor, octagonal structure, multi-generational families with one open room with no electricity and no running water, and they just have their way. So it's like they're caught between maintaining traditional ways, but living in a community that is like high-speed internet and cell phones. And so I feel like there's a tug within the community to what do we preserve and how. And so there isn't running water and electricity in some of our family, and they live very remotely. I mean, our transportation, we have to go 20 miles in every direction to gather our students, because it's extremely rural. When it rains, some people can't come to school because their roads are washed out. And so these are things that we deal with. I think also healthcare is a main issue. There's emergency care, but for chronic illnesses and things, you would have to go to Albuquerque or Flagstaff or Farmington, which are all 2 hours away or more in any direction. And so the whole family goes. And so kids are missing school because someone in the family has to go have a doctor's appointment in Albuquerque. So there are a lot of things you can't control, and many things by virtue of living in Gallup make teaching and running a school in Gallup difficult. But there's a richness to the community where there's lots of people who are artisans and artists, and there's a variety of demographics, and so you have a real melting pot there. And it's interesting to have all those perspectives and all of those backgrounds and opinions within our community. And so it makes it difficult and very beautiful and rich in another way. So
you talked about the struggles you had during COVID. Well, you get through COVID, and obviously the last 2 or 3 years, you're building momentum. And when Colleen and I were out there, I know I was surprised at the enrollment of your school. It was, we did your morning exercises in your gymnasium, it was packed. So tell me
Doug,
about...
We didn't do them. We watched. Please.
Well, I'd like to think that we did.
No, you're delusional.
Hey, I'll take it anywhere I can get exercise. But anyway, I was very impressed. Your numbers obviously have gone way up from the 200 plus pre-COVID. So tell me about that growth and rapid growth that happened.
I know I always feel like I'm chasing a cart down the hill and trying to figure out what the balance is about having certain students and having families who want to be involved, but yet not too much that I can manage it. So I think I've erred on the wrong side sometimes, because I feel like it's a constant chase to keep up with it. So our enrollment right now for next year, I think, will be 850. I think our cap right now from the state is 1,200 students, and we could easily be at that number right now, except that I don't have the facilities. And it's hard to get highly qualified teachers to want to live in Gallup. So I've got to get that mission across to them and ask them if they feel the call to be there with us and to be really working hard, because they too could go other places and do other things. And why do I want to live in Gallup and deal with all of the problems and the ills? And actually, that's the whole reason why you want to be there, is to help deal with the problems and the ills and make it a better place. But at the same time, making sure that we're not coming in thinking that we have all the answers or that we understand how things should go. It's offering the education and then asking the questions and being curious about their responses to that, and growing us as a solid community where we are not trampling on the ideas and perspectives of others to say, this is the only way to look at this. So there are times when we come across things and we think, oh, this does feel like we've got to give it a little more attention, or we have to come at it in multiple ways, because it doesn't incorporate the perspectives of the people from this community. So we've formed a group of teachers and staff, and it's our job to kind of go through the curriculum and talk about things and how do we honor the different and celebrate the different cultures. I think one of the pieces in the curriculum, there was a book that for some students who live in other parts of the country, it says A Day in the Life of the Native American. And I'm not sure that's, let's talk about that instead of reading this text. Let's talk about, a typical day and the different tribes that are around us and what were traditional ways of doing things and what are the ways that we do these things now. And so we try to be careful about it and understanding, and yet we're not trying to change the curriculum either. It's like we want all our students to know the information. We're not shifting, we're not changing it. But there might be times where somebody wants to have a discussion, especially as they get older, about why things are the way they are. So if we're teaching our students to be critical thinkers, we want them to have information and also have the communication skills to share their point of view in an effective way, but also have them be open and reflective to the answers that they get and continually be forming their opinions and insights and communicating them in effective ways.
So you went from essentially 0 students from the beginning to 8 to 50 in 7 years, which is, I think, remarkable, especially given the hurdles that you've had. But outside of COVID, what have been some of the biggest challenges to your success?
I think facilities are the finances. Gallup is very landlocked. It's like a little island surrounded by desert, and you have to go 2 hours in any direction to find a bigger community. So when you're in that community, then it's hard to attract staff to want to live there. It's hard to find facilities because Gallup is as big as it can be, and there aren't opportunities for us to expand into a suburb. There are no suburbs. We're it. And also, I think to have people participating in what we're trying to do. So finding people who want to serve on our board, finding people who want to provide donations, or to be there for us to sort of propel us forward. That's been hard. It feels like we've been propelled by our families wanting some things, but not being able to provide everything as quickly and as efficiently to them as we would like. But we've continued to expand. Next year will be our first graduating class. And so we need to be careful about it. We need to do it well. It can't just be about numbers, and it can't just be about, I'm going to teach the curriculum. I tell the teachers, we're not teaching curriculum, you're teaching human beings how to be better human beings. And that's your role.
So when Doug and I visited, we were able to see your morning assembly, which you recommended, and I am so appreciative that you did, because I was standing there and I don't have a lot of experience obviously in these schools or seeing other examples, but I was standing there and these kids are all standing in lines for 30 minutes or so and respectful. And you did the Pledge of Allegiance. You do it regularly in Zuni, Spanish, and then
Navajo and English.
In English, yeah. Navajo? Okay, sorry. Navajo.
4 languages. Yeah.
4. Okay, so Zuni, Navajo, Spanish, and English. And the kids, and then they recited the preamble after. Is that right? Okay. And I was just blown away. Embarrassingly, I had just tears streaming down my face. I mean, the enthusiasm and the joy that all of these kids had during those moments, I mean, that's what really left an impact. And then as we were walking around, and you could see that joy and the respect, and I just don't think that that's, from what I've heard and seen, common in normal public education. So I was blown away by it. I thought it was remarkable. And I want to know if you can share how you're doing that. How are you instilling this love of learning and joy in these kids?
Well, I think it's by being real about the curriculum and teaching them hard things and holding them accountable to hard things so they really feel that they are making accomplishments. When you are awarded or recognized for something that is not all that hard to do, you don't really value that praise. You don't value the fakeness of everybody getting a trophy. So, so nobody cares about the trophy at that point. So, but if you're real about the things that are hard and you encourage and hold that bar high, and when students strive and meet those goals, there's joy because they see themselves achieving things that they did not know that they could do. And the other side of it, I think, there's a love of learning if there's a love of my humanness. There's a connection to me as a human being, that I have value, that I have dignity, that I'm important, I deserve respect. And when I treat the staff that way, and then the staff treat the students that way, we form a community of people who are very clear about our mission. And we also recite the mission, probably not the day that you were there.
Mission of the school, yeah.
Mission of the school. So everybody knows we have the same job. I have the same job that you have. This is our job, the mission of Hozho Academy, when we state it. And we have different things that we have to do within our jobs to make this mission happen, but we all have the role of making this mission happen. And so there's community. So I think it's the teachers know they're doing hard things, the students know they're doing hard things, they can appreciate those accomplishments, and we still are an environment where we love and respect each other.
And do you have a particular story that you're willing to share about the impact that this has had on individuals' lives?
It's hard to find one particular story because there are so many. And then I could start a story, and then somebody, if they were in my school, they're, well, what about this? Oh, yeah, that
So
one too.
many, yep.
There's so many stories. But I think it's pretty common for our students to not have parents. In the last few years, I think about 50 or more students have lost either one or both of their parents. And many others don't have their parents in their lives. And when I say lost, I mean they've passed away. Usually from things like substance abuse or accidents and things like that. So it's pretty common that our students don't have that same support that students might have in other Barney charter schools across the country. And so we do have a particular student that I think about from time to time where he doesn't have a relationship with his father and loved his mother. His mother loved him, but she had demons and they got the best of her sometimes. And she was in continual domestic abuse situations where the kids were there and grandma's having to pick the kids up and bring them to school. And we don't even know that this has happened. And it's, we've gone a whole day without giving this child any support. And he felt like he was the man of the house. And then his mom wound up having to go to jail. And once she was in jail, she died. And when you think about the impact of that, it's not just that this child is living without his mother or father. It's that the trauma of that situation has an impact on his ability to connect and learn, make relationships. I mean, he's in a very delicate place in his life where, who do I love? Who loves me? Who can I count on to be there? And so he has struggled with those things, but he has really taken to the curriculum that we have, and he is our school historian. I will call him in assembly sometimes, and if I don't know the answer to a question, I'll say, let's ask this student and call him out, and he knows the answer. So I see him thriving, and I feel like all the trouble, all the hard things that we have to do is nothing compared to what this child has got to do, right? So I can do my hard things in order for him to thrive. So, but that's just one story. And he even has a sister and other family members that are there. And I mean, the list goes on and on. It's just incredible the amount of difficulties some of our students are facing. And then to find the balance when he comes to school, we have to hold him to a high standard knowing all these things. So So the other idea is that you come in and then you feel sorry for somebody. You think, oh, they've got it so hard. I better not make school hard, but school has to be hard for him to be able to find his way in this world. Right? He's got to have those tools. And so if you care about him, then you've got to make him work hard.
Great.
Okay, I think we'll take a break and be right back with the White and Blue podcast.
This show is a part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to your favorite. You'll get brand new episodes of all your favorite shows sent right to your device, and you'll help us know that you're out there listening. Never miss another episode by going to podcast.hillsdale.edu/subscribe. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu/subscribe. Or click the follow or subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube.
Now it's time for the Hillsdale History Minute, where we bring a slice of Hillsdale College history to the White and Blue podcast. For today's minute, we took a look at May Gorsland Preston Slauson from the class of 1878. An American educator and suffragist, in 1880, she became the first woman in the United States to receive a doctoral degree in philosophy, earning her PhD from Cornell University. She was a professor of Greek at Hastings College in Nebraska and later was reportedly the first female prison chaplain in the United States, serving at the Wyoming State Penitentiary in Laramie. She passed away in 1943 at the age of 85. Welcome back to the White and Blue podcast, where we have 1991 graduate Juliane Malia Hillock as today's guest. Juliane, we were talking about all the great things you're doing at Hozho Academy and the challenges, but also the successes. You also said when we visited you that you couldn't do it without Hillsdale College. So could you talk a little bit about that and what you meant by that comment?
When we were starting the school, the state of New Mexico did not allow Hillsdale College to sign a contract with us to provide us support. They did not think that Hillsdale College's influence was something that New Mexico students should have access to. They felt like, Hillsdale was not the right influence. So in time, I don't know what makes people feel that way. It's just, that they have preconceived notions and prejudices or something. So we've had to build a relationship with our authorizers. And I think we've done that. I think they trust that we really do have the best interest of our students at heart. But at that time, it was very tenuous, and I thought, I cannot open up a school in Gallup, New Mexico, based on classical education without the support behind me of Hillsdale College. There's just no way. Even with them, I'm not sure I could do it, but without them, it's impossible. So that Hillsdale was very good and understanding, and we continued to work through those difficulties until we were able to overcome them and have our relationship kind of be official. And the state has accepted that, and so we're all good there. But the influences and the support have really been the things that have propelled us in our school and propelled me, I think, because I'm not even sure if our community really understands about Hillsdale's connection. But Hillsdale's connection is the thing that has supported me and has helped direct the school in positive ways and has connected us to staff who may not have otherwise wanted to move to Gallup, but understand the mission clearly by having Hillsdale's support. So that makes it easier for them to sign on and for me to sign on and for us to do the hard work. But after COVID, what we noticed was that in New Mexico, the families were really struggling with the comorbidity and the rate of the impact of the virus in their community, and even the number of deaths were disproportionate to other communities. And that's for a lot of reasons. Obviously, if you don't have running water and if you're in a multi-generational family in a very close quarters, those things will happen. But when I came to a visit at Hillsdale for one of our training sessions, and honestly, I always struggle thinking in the middle of February, I have to come up to Hillsdale and I can't get away. I can't do it. And then somebody will call me and say, you really need to come. And, okay, I book my ticket and I come. And then something transformative happens while I'm here. And like, okay, I was supposed to be here to hear this message. So after COVID, we had so many students who were struggling in their families with health issues that made them more vulnerable to COVID. So we looked at that, and in McKinley County, the county that Gallup is in, the 32 counties, it's the lowest performing as far as had the worst health statistics. And probably the top 10 causes of death were all preventable. And the life expectancy of somebody in Gallup or McKinley County is 66. So about a little more than 10 years off the national average. So when we're thinking about providing an education and doing all this work, we want them to have a beautiful life. And part of that is the number of years that they can also have an impact. When I came to that February conference, PG, which I can never say his name. That's why he goes by PG.
Either. Yeah.
So PG, he was talking about the motivation factor. There's a video on Amazon that had a bunch of research and lots of information about the schools in La Sierra High School out in California, and a number of, I think it was in Modesto, there was another school that was currently using this trunk program. And it's sort of based on Kennedy's idea about the President's Council on Physical Education back in the 60s, and that there was going to be a push to have everybody be participants, not spectators, in physical education. And then, of course, that went away with his assassination. And since then, I think everybody has kind of felt like PE might be an add-on, especially when you're working in places where there's a big achievement gap. You think there's no time for physical education. But what PG had presented and had done a professional development on, and watching the motivation factor, reading the literature with it, I understood that Gallup needed this. And so we implemented this trunk program where students in the high school have to go every day to PE. When my kids were in high school, they had to have one PE credit in 4 years. And my daughter did bowling, which was even an online class. It wasn't even anything. So
online bowling
was online. You had to just put in your scores and scan your things.
Games.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah,
I was going to say.
So what could we do, and how do we? So when we presented to our staff about the health issues, and our community obviously understood that this is a real problem. So we've put a lot of time and energy in developing a physical education program to provide our students with information about how to be healthy in their bodies. And if you're talking about building a school, which is looking at the whole student, mind, body, and spirit, body cannot be an add-on. It's really integral. And I see students having to sit longer and longer in other public schools where there's no recess time. It's taken away because we need to work harder, when really it's that access to movement and exercise that prepares the brain to take in more information. I mean, we always feel that way when I know I do when I'm working. At some point, it's just you just hit a wall and just no more can happen. But if you get up and you move and you take a walk and you get some fresh air, you can come back at something. So forcing our students to sit and work harder, and then to medicate them and say, no, you need to, your attention is, you don't have enough attention to your task. So we're trying to get away from that. Just get our students to understand their bodies and how things work, and have our teachers accept the fact that our students need to go and get exercise. And so we've implemented that at throughout the school, but high school, our upper school, actually, 7th grade through 12th, every single day, PE required class.
Well, and this is not just your typical PE class. These are like CrossFit WODs that they do. I mean, that's what I thought. It was like functional strength and functional movement and just the kind of stuff that I didn't get in PE.
Right.
Up. I had to force myself to learn it now, but
right. That's why we want our kids to have that information to keep their bodies strong and healthy throughout their lives. In some communities, you might see walking paths, and you might see community playgrounds and parks where people engage in different kinds of activities. But in Gallup, that's just not. There are parks, but they're not always the safest place, and there are no, walking paths that families and kids on bicycles and things. So and then more and more we see kids finding ways, like the more the infrastructure changes and they're providing more internet now and providing more cell service now, that kids are more and more and more just being addicted to their phones and to that. So having a no phone policy at the school and having PE required, not only does that change their health, but it changes their relationships. So instead of sitting on their phone, they're having conversations with people at the table, and they're encouraging each other through the PE program. And it is based on the same idea, where students, if they're on a video game, it's like next level, next level, next level. And that's the addictive part of that.
Competition.
And so we do that with the PE program. It's like you can next color shorts, and then you're in the next color shorts. And then how many more points before you can get to the next level? And so our students are striving for that, and meanwhile making themselves as healthy and strong as possible.
And you have a nutritional component too.
We do. Yeah. We've tried to we also said, well, it doesn't do us much good to have this PE program and then have the National School Lunch Program feed them chicken nuggets and French fries for lunch. So it's kind of a mixed message. But it's very, very difficult to provide a fresh, non-processed lunch program through the National School Lunch Program because of all the components that you have to report on. So it's much easier to read a bag of French fries and figure out per serving how much of this, how much of that, how many vitamins, how many calories, and you just put it on a little sheet. But if you have fresh food, you've got to figure out ways to make those determinations, and it's much harder.
Well, and you have to source it in an area that doesn't really
in the food deserts, right? And that there are very few places to get local fresh foods. That's the other thing, is we added a gardening component so that students would learn how to garden in this community. What will grow in Gallup? Nothing without a fight, but we try to make it happen. So what grows and what grows well, and how do you grow it? And meanwhile, we're talking to them about, what the foods are and how to prepare them and what do they do for your body. And so as much as we can, we're trying to be no processed food. And we would like to expand our gardening program. We had 2 greenhouses, but in Gallup in the spring, winds are like 50 miles an hour, and we had to bring the kindergartners in or put rocks in their pockets so they don't fly away. And one of our greenhouses was whirling in the air like Wizard of Oz. No. So now we're down to 1, but we'll get back to it. And we have a major program right now to develop our facilities, and hopefully in time we can have those.
When
gardens.
You say program, do you mean like a campaign? Or
we just completed a bond process so that we will be creating a new sports complex, which will be a domed structure. So with, hopefully all of the things that will, like the weight room that will be premier in our community. And because of our elevation, I think our students are naturally preparing and exercising in environments that are conducive to making them the best that they can be. So we're looking forward to that and building our cafeteria and garden areas so that we can improve those programs and add more portables so we can bring more students in. But to do that in a way that we have to have the right staff, and we have to prepare our staff, and all of that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
And right now your gym and your cafeteria are one and the same, correct?
So for the high school, yes, that's the case. For elementary, they have to eat in their classroom. They don't even have a place outside
Wow.
of their classroom to eat. But we try to spin it in a way, it's like it's, the art of civility, of sitting down and having a meal, not in this loud, crazy cafeteria where, it's like a quiet eating space and there's conversation and things. So, but eventually having a cafeteria is just going to be necessary for the function of a school day, and having space to move through the lunch lines and all of that. So we're working on that for next year or the years to come.
Yeah, you've been garnering a lot of attention, I know, at the college. When we came back, I know I was telling everybody who would listen about my experience there. It was fantastic. But recently, you got the attention of someone a little bit more prominent than myself and a few people at Hillsdale. Could you talk about that?
So we did have a visitor. RFK came down to visit. He was in the area and had heard about our school and came by and did a talk with our kids about the importance of being healthy, and shook some hands. And it was a short visit, but it was impactful for our students because in that assembly where we do the preamble and the pledge, I also introduced them to their local governance, so like city council and mayor, our state senators and representatives. And then we went to the national level, and I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about who's in the executive branch and the legislative branch. And so in the executive branch, we went through and talked about the different secretaries. And then, we were able to meet one. And then the next month, we took our 10th grade and 11th grade to Washington, D.C. for a trip. And we had a reception at the National Archives. And Secretary Wright from Secretary of Energy was there and spent a nice time talking to our students, encouraging our students. His wife was there also, and they all mingled with our staff and some of our board. And it was a nice visit and nice time. And it was just so great to see our students having discussions with people in such prominent positions, and that having them understand that these are just people, right? And we respect them for their job and what they do and the things that they've done in life to get them to that point. We honor them for that, but we understand that they are citizens, free and equal, just like everybody else. And that's the great thing about our government, and that our students can aspire to those positions and to be the influence for the next generation. And so those are all important things for them to learn.
Very good. So you are obviously a Hillsdale alum, and tell us about did you want to be an educator before Hillsdale, or did you discover that at Hillsdale, and what was that process like?
I think I always knew this is where I was going to be in education. There's a time where about high school where you think that's not enough to aspire to. It's not glamorous enough of a position. So I started thinking about, do I want to be a doctor? Or then when I came to Hillsdale, then I wanted to be a professor of English, at a university or whatever. It's like, and no, I'll wind up working with special education students who are 5 years old and don't speak. So, but what Hillsdale prepares you for is for anything, to find goodness, right? To work towards the good all the time. And so by being here, it was just a little more flexible. I could feel like I could do anything. I had so many options. But yeah, I always fell back to education. I used to make my brother and my toys were all in school. I was always the teacher. We never traded roles, though. So I always knew that was something I was drawn to. So in time, found my path.
You said Hillsdale prepares you for anything. So let me ask you maybe a difficult question. Is it harder to lead a school or to be the president of a sorority house, which you were when you were on campus?
Well, I'm a little removed from that time of the sorority house. At the time, being the principal of the sorority house was the thing that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done, because I am, a type A personality. I want things to be perfect. And so what I wanted to do was control the environment and control the people.
Good luck. I was also a Pi Phi.
Were you? Yes. Unruly.
Yeah.
So what I had to learn was, how do you become a leader, right? And it isn't by imposing your will. It's by gaining consensus and moving in a direction of the same mission, right? So it was much harder for me to be the principal, because the things I had to learn were about me, and that I can't control things. I've got to let things be and move them along and be creative and be a servant. But those things were what prepared me to be able to be a leader of a school in Gallup. So right now in my life, of course, I think this is the hardest thing. But honestly, that was harder to learn, because I just didn't want it to it was just more efficient if I could just get control of it and make people do what I wanted them to do. And I could get on with other things that I had planned for that time. But that is the thing about leadership, right? To gain the consensus and of the governed. I was voted in, right? I wasn't appointed. So those are important things for me to learn that I've carried my whole life.
Well, teaching and education is not glamorous, but it's one of the greatest things I think you could choose to do. And I hope that you feel a little bit of glamour Saturday night at the Alumni Awards banquet.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for all your wonderful work, and congratulations on all your success. It's really amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's fantastic.
Thank you. You're always welcome to come back.
I will. I'll plan on it.
I'll teach you the Pledge of Navajo.
Yeah.
I definitely want to go back and do the John Wayne Burger again at El Rancho.
Yes. That was a nice plug for them.
Yes.
Oh, it's so fun.
So for Colleen McGinnis, this is Doug Goodnow thanking you for joining us on the White and Blue Podcast. And may that spirit long remain.